This episode is part 2 in a series analyzing the First Order. What you're about to watch is not an overview and history of the First Order as it was, but rather our idea of what it could have been if, for whatever reason, the Templin Institute were put in charge of its development. To understand why we made the changes we did, be sure to watch part 1, in which I discussed the ways we felt the First Order didn't quite work. And because this episode is at its core a reimagining of the First Order, we've made the decision to exclusively use concept art to portray it. Some of the artwork might contain elements you recognize, others might be repurposed, while others still might have never been brought to life. We also reached out to a variety of talented artists who each created their own interpretations of the Galactic Empire and the First Order, who graciously allowed us to include their work. In this latter instance, you'll find their credits in the description. So while this artwork together doesn't always perfectly reflect our version of the First Order, it serves as a fantastic starting point. And finally, the Templin Institute did commission one piece of artwork for use in this episode. For more details on how you can obtain a digital wallpaper version of it, stick around after the video.
When the fires of the Galactic Civil War had finally been extinguished and a peace treaty was signed, there arose the great task of sifting through all the details. Only by carefully studying what remained of the Imperial archives and the countless code cylinders, official logs, and other captured documentation could the full scale of the Galactic Empire's crimes become known. For decades, the New Republic's intelligence services commanded an army of investigators, analysts, and clerks to pore over every communique sent, every order given, every fact committed to Imperial records. Old battlefields were analysed, starship wrecks left adrift were recovered and studied. It was an arduous task, for many of the last acts of the Galactic Empire had been devoted to destroying its darkest secrets and covert plans. It was from this great effort that the first warning signs arose. The discrepancies were subtle, but as more and more were found, a pattern began to emerge. Within the official Imperial logs, Star Destroyers were recorded as lost in battles in which they couldn't have participated. Stormtrooper legions were marked as destroyed in campaigns in which they were never deployed. More and more, as the war dragged on towards its inevitable conclusion, the orders of the Imperial military shifted from strategic defense to something else entirely. Confident in their supremacy over the galaxy, the New Republic dismissed these inconsistencies as the natural consequence of the Imperial military's disintegration into rival warlords. Without a single unifying figure, an heir to the Emperor, such chaos, it was argued, was to be expected. And while this reasoning could explain a great many of the mysterious orders and redeployments made in the final months of the Galactic Empire, New Republic intelligence was forced to admit that large formations of the Imperial military, together with high-level administrators, technologists, and nobles, had simply disappeared. Had the New Republic pursued this mystery in earnest, then the galaxy might have been spared a second Great War, and the victory of the rebellion not have been so easily overturned. Instead, the missing fleets and armies of the Empire, its highest remaining leaders and most ardent supporters, were given a respite, hidden in the depths of the unknown regions. Here, to their astonishment, they found a base of power waiting for them, from which they could one day return to the greater galaxy and reform the Empire. This was their First Order. In the tumultuous years leading up to the Clone Wars, the fear that his true nature as a Dark Lord of the Sith might be exposed weighed heavily upon Chancellor Palpatine. While his eventual triumph over the Jedi Order would remove the greatest threat to his ascendancy, even as Emperor, he was forced to conceal his Sith identity from the Empire he ruled. Should this deception ever be revealed, there remained the ever-present possibility that the wider galaxy, or even his own secular military, might move to overthrow or assassinate him. The unknown regions, a chaotic patch of space where hyperspace routes grew unpredictable, presented a unique opportunity for Palpatine's future plans. If reliable passages through its territories could be found, then a true Sith shadow regime might be established there. Isolated from the rest of the galaxy, the Sith ideology could flourish openly, and the region could act as a refuge to which the Chancellor and then Emperor could permanently flee should his nature be discovered. Under Palpatine's direct instruction, a vast effort to chart the unknown regions was undertaken by the Galactic Republic. The operation was portrayed as a relatively small-scale exploratory and scientific venture, intended to uncover new sites for colonization and forgotten relics of the High Republic. The Outer Reaches expansion program, as it was then known, was publicly suspended with the succession of the Confederacy of Independent Systems and largely forgotten by the end of the Clone Wars. In truth, however, the work to map the unknown regions never ceased. Republic clones replaced the initial civilian workforce, and then were themselves supplanted by loyal members of the nascent Imperial military. Classified at the highest level, even those directly involved in the project were unaware of its true scope and the full extent of the resources devoted to it. Recovered information from the Jedi Temple on Coruscant proved invaluable in guiding Imperial expeditions, but it was Grand Admiral Thrawn who provided the most valuable insights. As a former member of the Chiss Ascendancy, a sovereign state native to the unknown regions, Thrawn's knowledge of the area produced more tangible results in a single year than the project had yielded in the previous decade. Thrawn's disappearance during the expanding galactic civil war proved to be a setback, but a minor one, as the greatest discoveries had already been made. First among these was the location of Exegol, an ancient, forgotten stronghold of the last Sith Empire. All those present at the time of its discovery would be quietly killed in the ensuing decades, ensuring knowledge of its location remained with the Emperor alone. Had Palpatine's rule over the Galactic Empire been allowed to continue for a century or more, Exegol and the unknown regions would have become the core of a new Sith dominion. From here, Sith cults and loyalists would have been gradually incorporated into the Imperial military, before the entire Galactic Empire as a whole was eventually subsumed. At the time of Palpatine's death during the Battle of Endor, only the initial stages of this plan had been completed. The unknown regions had been rapidly developed with enormous fleet yards, anchorages, infrastructure, and even a collection of colonized worlds, but they were largely automated, home to only a small collection of Sith cultists and a deteriorating slave workforce. As the Empire collapsed, it was to this refuge that a hardcore group of Imperial loyalists were instructed to flee. Crimson messenger droids, sentinels bearing the face of Emperor Palpatine himself, appeared before carefully selected military units, civil authorities, and industrial oligarchs. Their disappearance from the front lines was concealed by psychological military operations, namely Operation Cinder, whose purpose was to sow chaos and delay any response by the New Republic. Admiral Ray Sloan, General Maximilian Veers, and Commandant Brendol Hux represented the three highest-ranking military officers to escape to the unknown regions. As the Galactic Empire continued its slow collapse, these officials created an informal triumvirate, utilizing the infrastructure of the region to form the core of a new imperial state. The bureaucrats and civilian officials who had likewise found refuge in the Enclave were incorporated, sometimes forcefully, into this new hierarchical structure. While it was initially hoped that a counter-offensive might be launched from the unknown regions and the complete collapse of the Empire prevented, the signing of the Galactic Concordance and the lack of available manpower prevented these plans from reaching fruition. As the New Republic grew to become the dominant galactic power, the Triumvirate severed communications with the last Imperial holdouts and made every effort to conceal its existence. For 7 years, this isolationist, hidden remnant of the Galactic Empire worked to create a true sovereign state in the unknown regions, but the Triumvirate became divided. Neither Veers, Sloan, or Hux could agree on the state's ultimate goal, whether it should work to overthrow the New Republic or even reveal itself to the wider galaxy at all. The presence of the Sith cultists throughout the unknown regions also became a point of contention. While their connection to the dark side of the Force remained largely unknown to the Imperial remnant, misconstrued as simply a worship of the Emperor and Darth Vader, their usefulness had reached its end. Distrustful of their mystical nature, and no longer reliant on them to maintain the region's infrastructure, the Triumvirate moved to arrest their leaders and relocate their followers into forced labor camps. But on the eve of this operation, the 501st Legion, the most elite formation present within the Remnant, initiated a coup against the Triumvirate. At their head was a mysterious Force user known only as Snoke. One of the first guides to the Imperial exiles within the unknown regions, Snoke was believed to have simply been a minor figure within a seemingly unimportant cult known as the Eternal. Sloane, Viers, and thousands of other Imperial officials were killed in the following days, replaced with new personnel loyal to Snoke, who in turn claimed the position of Supreme Leader as his own. Under the rule of Snoke, the secular nature of the Imperial Order was modified to incorporate the ideology of the ancient Sith Order. The open recognition and forced adherence to a religion almost synonymous with terror and evil disturbed many of even the most hardened Imperial loyalists, but Snoke's displays of power and gifts of material wealth served as a suitable foundation for his seizure of leadership. For the first time in thousands of years, a Sith Empire operated openly once more within the galaxy. At its heart was Exegol. Key to the survival of this growing empire was secrecy. The forces of the New Republic would likely not possess the capability to launch a military campaign into the unknown regions for decades, but the power of Luke Skywalker remained an omnipresent threat. To disguise its true nature, Snoke orchestrated the creation of the First Order, a shroud behind which the Sith ideology could flourish. Today, in the modern era, the First Order exists in two distinct but increasingly interconnected forms. The first of these is the facade of the First Order that Snoke projects to the New Republic and the wider galaxy. It is spread not by fleets and armies, but through manifestos and ideological pawns. Rather than a traditional sovereign state, this expression of the First Order is instead a political doctrine and social movement, advocating a centralized government, the militarization of society, and other such tenets embodied by the former Galactic Empire. It acknowledges that the Imperial system was flawed, and that it committed atrocities, but actively works to downplay these horrific acts in favor of a fictional, inspirational narrative. First Order communications, broadcast publicly across the HoloNet, extol the Empire's achievements against piracy, slavery, and lawlessness. They criticize the New Republic as weak and ineffectual, especially in the traditionally backwards territories in the Outer Rim. The ideological beliefs and revisionist history of the First Order has found a myriad of supporters across the galaxy. Many of the lingering remnants of the Galactic Empire, petty realms whose warlords were never trusted with the secrets of the unknown regions, have openly embraced it. Some Imperial warlords have adopted the virtues of the First Order out of an honest belief in their value, while others see it only as a way to cement their own legitimacy. Even within the borders of the New Republic, however, the First Order has made significant gains, particularly among those who feel disenfranchised with the current government. Many radical political parties, lobbyist groups, paramilitary organizations, and even charities have become aligned to First Order goals and motives. To conceal the existence of the Sith Empire within the unknown regions, Snoke and his representatives only communicate with these Imperial remnants and sympathetic groups through intermediaries. These are mainly trusted operatives, dummy corporations, and third-party messengers unaware of the substance of their messages. Most First Order adherents within the galaxy are completely unaware of Snoke's influence, and might feel repulsed or threatened by that fact should it come to light. In this way, both outside Imperial remnants and loyal Republic citizens have been misled into actively working against their own self-interest. This aspect of the First Order outside the unknown regions has two major goals. The first is to sow dissent and division within the New Republic's political structure. The second is to create a galaxy-wide fifth column, a network of supporters who can undermine the Republic and then mobilize openly during the outbreak of war. In both these areas, there have been major successes. First Order-aligned political parties have found representation within the Galactic Senate, and tens of millions of First Order operatives operate clandestinely within every level of galactic society. Even in the Outer Rim territories, historically resistant to any external authority, First Order-backed anti-piracy forces have embarrassed the New Republic by confronting criminals and slavers that had been ignored for decades. In most cases, however, it is the Sith Empire that secretly funded these outlaw groups to begin with, and they are effectively gaining renown across the galaxy for ending a crisis they created themselves. While such covert operations carry with them an inherent risk, and are unlikely to affect major political change on their own, it is a strategy that the New Republic has so far been unable to successfully counter. Yet every action undertaken by this aspect of the First Order is ultimately meant to conceal the existence of its second form, the Sith Empire that lies at its heart, known as the Sith Eternal. As a true successor to the Sith dynasties that ruled the galaxy in ancient times, the Sith Eternal exists as an absolute stratocracy. Executive power is invested solely in the Supreme Leader beyond the ability of any written law, legislature, or custom to constrain. The Force user known as Snoke remains the first and thus far only Supreme Leader in the history of the Sith Eternal, but his own connection to the dark side of the Force remains unknown, even to his most loyal supporters. In contrast to ancient Sith Emperors, Snoke has also shown a willingness to cast aside ancient dogma and tradition in favor of more practical and efficient methods, especially those utilized within the former Imperial military. Under Snoke, whenever tradition clashes with modern efficiency, even the ancient dogma of the Sith might be reformed or destroyed. In a strange irony, where the Imperial system was intended by Palpatine to be subsumed by the Sith Order, in most cases, the opposite occurs. While the ancient Sith dynasties maintained a cabal of lesser Sith lords to communicate the will of the Emperor and serve as a ruling council, the mass extermination of Force users during the reign of the Galactic Empire means that it is now traditional military officers that form the upper hierarchy of leadership. The one exception to this is Kylo Ren, a Sith acolyte who is rumored to be a disgraced student of Luke Skywalker. Kylo Ren and the highest echelon of military leaders each act as a kind of regional governor, endowed with the same responsibilities and authority as the old Imperial Moffs. While the Code of the Sith encouraged fierce rivalries and competition among these officers, by the decree of Snoke, the Sith Council is a strict and fierce meritocracy. Officers promoted solely for their loyalty and ambition rather than their ability proved disastrous during the Galactic Civil War, and within the Sith Eternal, it is mastery of one's duties, not the Force, that dictates who rises through the ranks. This council, together with the armed forces of the Sith Eternal, dominates every political, economic, and ideological aspect of their society, in effect removing any distinction between military and civilian authority. Traditionally, the political structure of ancient Sith empires and even the Galactic Empire that followed was based around an aristocratic elite, noble titles, and privileges of birthright. Reforms enacted under the Triumvirate have eliminated this institution, and the success of these measures have ensured they remain under Snoke. Upon birth, a citizen of the Sith Eternal will be immediately entered into various state programs. The first of these to take effect is also the most secretive. Newborns found to be innately gifted with the use of the Force will be immediately seized, taken to specialized schools and environments to further harness their abilities. For all others, childhood consists of various youth leagues, which indoctrinate their members with the ideology of the state and provide an opportunity for particularly promising cadets to rise to a place of distinction. By adulthood, every member of the Sith Eternal will have had over a decade of experience within several different paramilitary groups. Their performance therein is then used as the basis by which they are assigned some other aspect of national service. In contrast again to the Sith empires of old, enlistment within a combat element of the armed forces is relatively rare and reserved only for those who show the greatest potential. Regardless of which aspect of society they are assigned, however, citizens exist within the same overriding military hierarchy. Within the Sith Eternal, every person is subjected to the ubiquitous state propaganda campaigns extending throughout all levels of society. These campaigns advocate the dedication of oneself to the good of the state, suppression of internal desires, and obedience to authority. While in many ways identical to the ideology of the First Order propagated throughout the outside galaxy, internal media is supplemented with direct references to the Sith and additional, heavily altered, historical parallels to ancient Sith heroes and accomplishments. While the Sith Eternal is in essence a single, vast military institution, at its core are its three major combat branches: the Army, Navy, and the Asha Karat. One of the many lessons learned from the fall of the Galactic Empire was the inefficiency of unwieldy, conscripted forces. With manpower in short supply across the unknown regions, the doctrine of the Sith Eternal has shifted across each branch towards smaller, professional formations. Compared to the Galactic Empire, the army of the Sith Eternal has undergone the most radical evolution. Under the initial tutelage of General Maximilian Veers, the Sith army has further refined the combined arms approach utilized by its Imperial predecessors. While much of its walkers, weaponry, and other equipment is recognizably Imperial in nature, their tactics have undergone a sizable shift. Emphasis has been placed on the outcome of a mission rather than the specific means of achieving it. Individual soldiers and officers are entrusted with far greater operational flexibility, leading to superior personal initiative among unit commanders. Gone is the rule through fear and intimidation that defined the earlier Tarkin doctrine. Individual units are nearly unrecognizable compared to their Imperial counterparts. To make up for manpower shortages, Sith legions incorporate tens of thousands of droids at every operational level, supplementing a much smaller core of organic soldiers. At the company level, droids might fill the role of supply or auxiliary personnel, or heavy weapons teams. Within Sith legions, entire divisions of droids are commanded by a scattered few organic officers, intended for use in battles of attrition that the Sith Eternal could otherwise ill afford. Instead, the Sith army is based around mobility, dropping from orbit to deliver a single powerful blow, followed by mechanized maneuver warfare. Sith doctrine is aimed at making it difficult for any enemy to react to a continually shifting front, becoming suitably unbalanced. Once circumstances are the most favorable, a single decisive battle of annihilation can be pursued. In the event that this is not achieved within a specified time frame, army elements will return to orbit rather than commit themselves to a war of attrition. Among the most elite formations of the Sith army are the so-called named legions. When a unit distinguishes themselves in some manner, they are awarded the title of an ancient Sith or Imperial hero. Among the most famous named legions are the 501st Vader, the 89th Revan, and the 134th Jerjerrod. The Sith Navy has likewise implemented various reforms meant to fix the deficiencies of its predecessor within the Galactic Empire. This is most apparent in its starfighter corps. Like the Sith army, the Navy is no longer willing or even capable of accepting needless losses. While its starfighters bear the same outward characteristics of the venerable tie line, they have incorporated shields, armor, and electronic countermeasures to prioritize crew survivability. Many models also feature personal hyperdrives, and pilots are expected to fly with equal proficiency within large formations as when alone or in small groups. While reliant on Civil War-era Imperial starships for much of its history, the first generation of Sith capital ships are mainly iterative rather than revolutionary. The Resurgent-class Star Destroyer, a modern replacement for the aging Imperial II class, shares many similarities with the design it was intended to replace. Its most radical improvements are the increased protection afforded to its shielding systems and bridge crew, and redundant systems meant to offset the effectiveness of ion weapons. The Mandata 4 Siege Dreadnought is likewise a comparatively conservative improvement over the Imperial Onager class, while the Toleraratus class is a redesign and modernization of the Clone Wars-era Acclamator class. These largely reactionary designs have allowed shipyards within the unknown regions to continue production uninterrupted for decades, slowly mobilizing enormous sector fleets comparable in size to those used by the Empire. At the center of these formations are the Indefatigable class Star Dreadnoughts, the Sith Eternal's successor to the Executor class Super Star Destroyers. Compared to their Imperial predecessors, the Indefatigable class are less suited to directly conducting planetary invasions, carrying fewer ground troops and the associated equipment. Instead, the class is intended to serve primarily as command vessels, with the facilities and sensor suites necessary to direct and manage an entire sector front. But the ultimate expression of the Sith Eternal's naval fleet is the enormous Supremacy class. Dwarfing even the largest superstar destroyers, the single vessel produced so far is closer in scale to the Imperial Death Stars than any other traditional ship in history. Rather than a dedicated warship, however, the Supremacy is something of a mobile forward operating base, designed to act as a bridge between the Sith Eternal's government within the unknown regions and its forces within the greater galaxy, once war against the New Republic is inevitably declared. While both the Sith Army and Navy have inherited many of the customs, equipment, and doctrine of their Imperial forerunners, the Asha-Karat stand alone in their complete devotion to the ancient Sith Order. Loosely translated from the Sith language, Asha-Karat, or the Victory of Death, is the third major independent branch of the Sith Eternal, and the only one to martial force users within its ranks. While much smaller in scale compared to the Army or Navy, and consisting of only a few legions and a single sector fleet, the Crimson Stormtroopers and Star Destroyers of the Asha-Karat are renowned for their fanaticism and are directly subordinate to Supreme Leader Snoke alone. Drawn primarily from the Sith cultists that predated the arrival of the Empire within the unknown regions, the Asha-Karat's devotion to the Sith has caused friction with the other two, largely secular branches of the military. It is the Asha-Karat that has been the most vocal in their objection to the reforms implemented by Snoke, and it is rumored that it is his mastery of the Force alone that keeps them in line. But despite this internal friction, every aspect of the Sith Empire is dedicated towards a single objective, known simply as the Day. Unbeknownst to the New Republic and the wider galaxy, a countdown has begun. When the day arrives, Sith fleets and armies will strike out from the unknown regions, seizing strategic star systems and engaging enemy formations. For 30 years, the plans have been drawn, every target identified, and every strategy considered. The First Order will soon assume its purpose, and when the power of the Sith are mobilized, they will be joined by countless collaborators, defectors, and a network of clandestine groups who only await the command. The first stages have already begun. Across the New Republic, intelligence officials have noted alarming trends amongst frontier piracy, mercenary, and slaver groups. They have recorded the growing reach and power of First Order-aligned paramilitary organizations, and they have observed with growing unease the mounting reports of unidentified ships and droids on the outer periphery of key Republic installations and worlds. But the most dangerous rumors are those spread within the Sith Eternal itself. Some say that Snoke, for all his power, is nothing but a puppet, and even he must report to a hidden master. Within the darkest depths of Exegol, it has been said there has been an awakening. Darkness rises, and the galaxy will tremble if the light does not rise to meet it.
Thank you for watching the Templin Institute's version of what the Sith Eternal and the First Order could have been. We tried our best to create a credible and interesting variation of a Sith Empire, but I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Which version of the First Order do you prefer? On the top right of your screen, you should see a poll in which you can vote on that very subject. Additionally, is there an area where we succeeded or failed? Is this a dangerous slide into the world of fanfiction? Let me know in the comments below. And if you'd like to get your hands on the artwork we commissioned for this episode, it is available on our website in HD resolution, with a 4K variant available exclusively on our Patreon for every $2 pledge and above. Thank you all so much for your support.